Have you ever frantically searched for your keys, only to realize they were in your hand all along? Or perhaps spent an agonizing few minutes trying to recall the name of an actor from a favorite film? A very familiar feeling, I'm sure. And that's when the truly worrying thought pops into your head. Is this the beginning of something serious? Is this dementia? Stop right there. Let's just take a deep breath, because in the vast majority of cases, 99% even, it most certainly is not. But how do we define that crucial line? The one that separates perfectly normal, age-related forgetfulness from the first genuinely worrying symptoms. In this video, we are going to break it down for you, step by step. We will clearly compare the natural processes of aging with the actual signs of dementia, ensuring you know exactly when there's no need to panic and when it truly is time to seek professional advice. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will have much more clarity and significantly less anxiety. Now let's be frank. The subject of aging and dementia is often shrouded in a huge amount of fear and myth. We live in a world where life expectancy is increasing, and that fundamentally is a wonderful thing. But hand in hand with longevity comes a growing concern about the quality of that life, especially the sharpness of our minds. The terms old age and dementia are often conflated, which just leads to unnecessary panic. People are afraid of every forgotten word or momentary lapse, seeing it instantly as the precursor to a serious diagnosis. Our goal today is to arm ourselves with knowledge. Understanding the clear difference between these two states isn't just fascinating, it is a vital, practical tool. It is the key to maintaining peace of mind, ensuring the proper care for our loved ones, and crucially, knowing when to seek timely professional help if and when it is actually needed. Let's work together to lift the fog of uncertainty surrounding this incredibly important subject. Right, let's tackle the biggest concern for most of us: memory. What counts as standard wear and tear for an aging brain? Imagine bumping into an old acquaintance in the street. You know their face instantly, you recall exactly how you met them, but their name is sitting right there, maddeningly, on the tip of your tongue. You feel that slight frustration, but then, a couple of hours later, perhaps when you're settling down for a cup of tea, the name suddenly pops straight into your head. Or perhaps you walk into a room and momentarily lose track of why you went in. Then you snap back. Oh right, I needed my reading glasses. These are what we call typical age-related memory lapses. Crucially, they affect the small details, not the core events or the gist of the matter. Your brain has just temporarily lost the key to that file, but the information itself hasn't gone anywhere. These little moments might become more frequent as we get older, mainly because the speed of information processing slows down a little bit. It can certainly be a bit of a bother, or slightly annoying, but it doesn't stop you from leading a completely full life, working, socializing, or managing your own affairs. This is a perfectly normal process, rather like an older computer that takes a little longer to load the program. It's still fully operational, it's just not quite running at the speed of a brand new machine. Now let's look at this same memory issue, but specifically through the lens of dementia. The picture here is completely different. We're not talking about a temporary loss of access to information. We're talking about the information itself being wiped away. Someone in the early stages of dementia might completely forget a recent conversation that happened just 10 minutes ago. They might ask the same question repeatedly, genuinely not remembering that they already received the answer. They could forget about important events, like a recent visit from their grandchildren, and no amount of prompting or reminders will help them recall it. If normal forgetfulness is like misplacing your keys, dementia is finding the keys and then having absolutely no idea what they are for. The problem affects not just individual details, but whole segments of recent experience. This isn't merely a slow processor, it's damage to the hard drive where the information is actually stored. These severe memory lapses begin to seriously impact daily life, leading to deep confusion and increasing dependence on others. This qualitative difference, the difference between forgetting a small detail versus forgetting an entire event, is the key marker we need to look out for. Now let's turn our attention to making choices. As we get older, we all occasionally make decisions that, well, weren't exactly brilliant. Maybe we snapped up a bargain only to find we didn't need the item. Or perhaps we accidentally drove straight into the heart of rush hour traffic. That's perfectly normal, isn't it? We process the situation, maybe not always perfectly, and make a choice based on our years of experience and, frankly, how we feel that day. Getting things wrong is just part of the human condition, regardless of how old you are. Someone in their later years might become incredibly cautious with money, or perhaps even a little too trusting. But the key is that they still absolutely understand the concept of finance, value, and the potential consequences of their choices. They might well decide to consult their children or a trusted friend before making a significant purchase, which is simply sensible planning. The long and short of it is this: the fundamental ability to reason and weigh up the pros and cons, albeit with a few personal quirks, remains intact. One, or even several, poor purchases are not a cause for worry. That's just everyday life, dear, not a worrying symptom. When we talk about dementia, we're not focusing on simple mistakes. It's about a systematic failure of judgment and critical thinking. The person begins to make consistently poor and sometimes genuinely dangerous decisions. This often becomes clear in their financial choices. They might hand over their entire savings to fraudsters because the scammer's story sounded plausible at the time, or they could start spending huge amounts of money on things they simply don't need. Another key area is personal hygiene and appearance. They might stop bathing, wear dirty clothes, or dress completely inappropriately for the weather, perhaps putting on a heavy winter coat in the middle of a summer heatwave. It's important to understand this isn't simply laziness. They genuinely don't see anything wrong with their behaviour. The critical voice we all rely on, the one that tells us, wait a minute, something isn't quite right here, slowly shuts down. This leaves the individual highly vulnerable and unable to adequately assess risks. This is why vigilance and intervention from family and friends become absolutely essential. Let's talk about the words we use. I'm sure every one of us has experienced that classic situation known as tip of the tongue. You're trying to tell a story and you just can't quite land on the right word. You know exactly what you want to say. You can almost describe the word itself, but the actual thing just slips away. This is a perfectly normal phenomenon. It's simply linked to how our memory operates and the speed at which we access our word bank. Now, as we get older, these little pauses might crop up a bit more frequently. That could be down to fatigue, stress, or simply the natural slowing down of those cognitive processes. Crucially, though, you never lose the thread of the conversation. You simply find a good synonym. You rephrase the sentence beautifully, and you carry right on talking. Your fundamental ability to construct grammatically sound phrases and articulate complex ideas hasn't vanished at all. It's nothing more than a momentary stumble, one that certainly doesn't interfere with the overall flow or the clarity of what you're saying to the person you're speaking with. In dementia, speech problems, sometimes referred to as aphasia, are really quite different. It's not just a simple case of being unable to find the right word. A person might suddenly stop mid-sentence, completely losing the thread of what they were saying. They might start using the wrong words, substituting one concept for another, which makes their speech sound quite muddled and confusing. For instance, instead of saying watch, they might call it a handheld time measurer. Over time, their vocabulary starts to shrink, and their sentences become much shorter and simpler. It becomes difficult for them not only to speak, but also to understand what is being said to them, particularly if the conversation is fast-paced or complex. They might frequently ask you to repeat yourself, or look quite confused, even though their actual hearing is perfectly fine. The core issue lies in the speech processing centre within the brain itself. This isn't just a simple blip or a temporary stumble. It's a systematic breakdown of language function that makes all forms of communication seriously challenging. Another classic scenario is the hunt for lost things. It's perfectly normal, isn't it, to occasionally forget where you put your reading glasses, the telly remote, or the house keys. When we're busy or rushing about our day, we often do things on autopilot without truly registering the action. However, the moment you start looking for the missing item, your brain usually kicks in. You begin mentally retracing your steps. Right, I came in, put my shopping bag down here, so the keys must be nearby. This logical search process, even if it doesn't succeed first time, is actually a sign of a well-functioning brain. You understand the purpose of the object and where it could theoretically be located. And then, inevitably, you find the keys tucked away in your coat pocket or sitting right on the kitchen counter. Whilst it's a bit annoying, this behaviour is not a sign of serious cognitive decline. It's just simple human absent-mindedness, something which can, perhaps, feel more noticeable as we get older or when we are particularly tired. With dementia, the problem of looking for lost belongings changes quite significantly. Firstly, the person doesn't just put an item down in the wrong spot, they put it in a completely illogical and strange location. For example, they might put their wallet in the fridge or a dirty plate in the clothes cupboard. Secondly, and this is the most crucial point, they have absolutely no recollection of how the item got there. They simply cannot mentally rewind the tape and retrace their steps to figure out what they did. This often leads them not just to look for the item, but to start accusing family or carers of theft. This is because in their mind, they genuinely didn't put it there. They truly believe someone else has hidden their glasses or the remote control. This symptom signals a serious breakdown, not just in memory, but in logical thinking as well. It's much more than just absent-mindedness. It's a profound disorganization of their thought processes, where the usual connections between objects and where they belong are completely broken down. Getting your bearings with time. Have you ever woken up in the morning and spent a few seconds thinking, is it Wednesday or Thursday today? Or perhaps you're on holiday and you completely lose track of the days of the week. That is perfectly normal. Our sense of time is strongly tied to our daily routine, and when that routine is disrupted, it's easy to feel a little lost for a moment. Usually, all it takes is a quick glance at a calendar, checking your phone, or just having a little think, and you're instantly back on track. An older person might occasionally mix up the exact date, especially if they are retired and their days aren't as strictly scheduled or regimented as they were when they were working. But they always know the current month, the year, and what season it is. They maintain their orientation concerning major blocks of time and can easily work out the exact date using external cues. This minor confusion doesn't impact their ability to plan things, arrive at appointments on time, or stick to their medication schedule. When we talk about disorientation in dementia, especially regarding time and place, it's a much more profound issue than simple forgetfulness. A person doesn't just lose track of the days of the week, they can become completely lost in months, seasons, or even years. They might genuinely believe it's still 1985 and be truly startled when they see their reflection in the mirror. This temporal confusion is very often mirrored by a loss of spatial awareness. Someone might get lost on a familiar street right outside their home, a route they've walked their whole life. They might simply pop out to the shops and be unable to find their way back. In more severe cases, they may stop recognizing their own flat or house, treating it as an unfamiliar or even hostile place. This results in a persistent state of bewilderment and fear. It's not just that they've forgotten the route, they have truly lost their internal map and compass. This is one of the most worrying symptoms of all, as it poses a direct risk to the person's safety and sadly necessitates constant supervision and care. Let's move on to tackling complex tasks. It's a recognised fact that learning new things becomes more challenging as we get older. An elderly person might find they need a bit more time and effort to master a new smartphone, figure out the settings on a modern television, or perhaps get to grips with online banking. They might ask for help or feel the need to jot down instructions, and that is perfectly normal. The brain naturally loses some of its plasticity as we age, meaning it takes up more energy and resources to form those brand new neural pathways. It can also become harder to multitask, for instance, trying to cook dinner while simultaneously having a conversation on the phone. Needing to concentrate on one specific thing is actually a very typical age-related shift. However, provided an older person is given clear, simple instructions, they are absolutely capable of mastering a new task. The crucial point is that the underlying ability to learn and follow a sequence of steps absolutely remains intact. In cases of dementia, difficulties often arise not when trying to learn new skills, but rather when faced with familiar routine tasks, things they've done on autopilot for decades. Take, for example, a woman who has baked wonderful pies her entire life. She may suddenly start confusing the ingredients, forget the sequence of steps, or even be unable to recall the recipe. Or a man who always handled minor repairs around the house suddenly can't work out how to use a simple screwdriver. The core difficulty isn't about acquiring new knowledge, but about executing tasks that are old and deeply ingrained. This also applies to simpler daily activities, such as getting dressed, performing basic hygiene, or even using cutlery. The very structure of multi-stage action starts to fall apart. Someone might start brushing their teeth, but then forget the subsequent steps required to finish. This is a clear indication that the disease is affecting those deep-seated automated skills we rely on every single day. Changes in mood are another big thing we notice. As we get older, our personalities often shift. Some people become a lot more sentimental, while others might get a bit more grumpy or conservative. Really set in their ways. We tend to become quite attached to our daily routine, and if that familiar setup gets disrupted, it can cause quite a bit of irritation. Say, if lunch is served an hour late, or perhaps the favourite programme on the telly gets cancelled. These little mood swings usually have a very clear root cause. They might be linked to general tiredness, feeling a bit under the weather, physical discomfort, or simply that mental inflexibility that comes along with advancing years. Crucially, though, these feelings are usually predictable and easy to explain. Once we've had a rest or the problem is sorted out, the mood generally settles right back down again. And the good news is, none of this prevents us from maintaining warm relationships with our loved ones and continuing to enjoy life. With dementia, changes in mood and personality take on a very different character. They are often unpredictable and seemingly unmotivated. A person might become overly suspicious, perhaps accusing close family members of theft, or even believing they're involved in some sort of conspiracy. They might become constantly anxious and terribly afraid of being left alone. Apathy is also very common, a loss of interest in things that used to bring joy, like beloved hobbies, spending time with the grandchildren, or even just going out for a walk. There can be sudden, seemingly baseless outbursts of anger, or sharp, rapid episodes of tearfulness. Someone who was always cheerful and outgoing might become completely withdrawn, while a previously calm and mild-mannered person could suddenly turn aggressive. These profound personality changes are often been the most difficult things for loved ones and carers to cope with. It is vital to remember this is not because the person has simply developed a difficult personality. It is because the disease is attacking the areas of the brain that control emotions, self-control, and social conduct. Essentially, they are losing part of who they are. Let's begin by clarifying the term itself. What exactly is dementia? It's crucial to understand that dementia isn't one single specific illness. Instead, it's an overarching or umbrella term describing a complex set of symptoms related to a progressive decline in cognitive functions. Put simply, it's a syndrome. Think of it this way. A cough is a symptom. That cough might be caused by a simple cold, an allergy, or something more serious like a lung disease. Dementia is exactly the same. It's a collection of symptoms such as memory loss, difficulties with speech, thinking, and spatial awareness that can stem from several different underlying causes. The most well-known and common cause is Alzheimer's disease, which accounts for 60 to 80% of all cases. However, there are other types, including vascular dementia,
dementia with Lewy bodies, frontotemporal dementia, amongst others. Each type has its own particular features, progression, and initial warning signs. This is why we can't equate dementia with Alzheimer's disease, even though they are very closely linked. Now let's address a widespread and, quite frankly, damaging myth. So many people assume that dementia is just an inevitable part of growing old. They believe that once you reach your 80s or 90s, losing your wits is almost guaranteed. I want to tell you straight away, that is simply not true. Yes, age is certainly the single greatest risk factor. The older a person is, the higher the statistical chance of developing dementia. But please remember this, it is a probability, not a life sentence. Countless individuals live into advanced old age, keeping a perfectly sharp mind and an excellent memory. Dementia is a disease. It is not a normal or expected stage of life. Unlike many health conditions, dementia has protective factors as well as risk factors. These essential protective steps include regular physical activity, a good diet, consistent mental stimulation, maintaining strong social connections, and critically, keeping a close eye on your blood pressure, sugar levels, and cholesterol. Our brain possesses an incredible ability known as neuroplasticity. By using it, we can actively build up what experts call a cognitive reserve, a mental buffer that helps the brain resist the disease for longer. So, there is absolutely no need to give up hope or assume that dementia is simply a fate you must accept. Dementia doesn't just affect memory and thinking, it can also seriously impact our visuo-spatial skills. That is, how we understand and manage space. It's crucial to distinguish these issues from normal, age-related sight problems. As we get older, many of us develop things like long-sightedness, cataracts, or glaucoma. We might start wearing glasses or need much brighter light just to read. These are changes related to the eye itself, the physical organ. However, when we talk about dementia, the problem lies in the brain, specifically the parts of the brain that are meant to process all that visual information. A person might look directly at an object, yet fail to recognize what it is. It becomes difficult to judge distances, making activities like driving extremely dangerous, and even simple movements across a room can become challenging. They might struggle with coordination, for example, missing the table completely when putting down a cup, resulting in spills. Distinguishing between colours and contrast can also become hard. Sometimes they find it difficult to read or track the text across a page. The key point is this: it's not that their eyesight is poor, it's that the brain simply cannot correctly interpret or make sense of the visual signals the eyes are sending. Another development that sometimes gives us pause is when someone starts withdrawing a little from social activities. It's completely natural, as we get older, to desire or crave a bit more peace and quiet. One might certainly find large, noisy groups rather tiring, and perhaps opt for a relaxed evening with a book instead of a bustling gathering. This is simply a normal, expected shift in life priorities and energy levels. The person still thoroughly enjoys catching up with close friends and family, but perhaps in a smaller circle and a much calmer setting. They dedicate time to their long-standing hobbies and interests. Giving up certain commitments is often a conscious choice made purely for comfort and convenience. For example, an older person might stop regularly attending the theatre because they find prolonged sitting uncomfortable, yet they will happily watch a televised performance at home. The crucial point is this: the genuine interest in life and connection remains. Only the format and the delivery method have changed. Social isolation in dementia happens for a different reason entirely. They don't stop seeing friends or doing hobbies because they're simply tired. It's because they find it increasingly difficult to keep up, whether that means following a complex conversation, grasping the plot of a film, or remembering the rules of a game. They start to feel self-conscious and deeply embarrassed about their struggles. Interactions that used to be a source of pleasure now become a huge source of stress. They worry about saying the wrong thing, missing the punchline of a joke, or forgetting the name of the person they're talking to. Because of this,
the easiest option is simply to avoid social situations altogether. This isn't a choice they make. It's a necessary act of self-preservation. Apathy, which is often a symptom of the illness itself, also plays a major role, causing them to simply lose all motivation and interest in anything at all. If you notice that a loved one, someone who was always the life and soul of the party, suddenly starts avoiding people and drops their favourite pastimes, that's a definite signal that you should take notice. Finally, let's look at one last, very common aspect: repetition. We all do it, don't we? Older folks often enjoy recounting the same stories from their younger days, particularly when they're talking to their grandchildren. It's their way of passing down experiences and reliving those cherished moments. What's interesting is that they usually do remember telling the story before, and they might even start off by saying, "Now, I know I've mentioned this already, but..." This is completely harmless, and actually quite a touching trait. In this context, repetition is a vital tool for connecting generations and passing on family values. Another common form of repetition is having to ask a question again, often because someone didn't quite catch the answer or needs a little clarification. There's absolutely nothing pathological about this. It's a perfectly normal part of communication, especially when dealing with age-related hearing decline. The key takeaway is that once they receive a clear answer or reaction, the subject is dropped, at least for a little while. So, let's summarise the key takeaways. The most crucial thing to remember is this: aging and dementia are absolutely not the same thing. Normal aging might involve slightly slower reactions and occasional forgetfulness about minor details, but crucially, it doesn't strip you of your independence or fundamentally erase your personality. Dementia, on the other hand, is a disease, a progressive condition that fundamentally alters a person's ability to think, remember, and function effectively in everyday life. The key differences lie in the nature of the problems. It's the difference between forgetting a name and forgetting the face of a loved one, misplacing an object and finding an iron in the refrigerator, or making a small error in calculations, versus completely losing the ability to manage your money. Understanding this distinction should ease unnecessary anxiety and help us spot genuine red flags when they appear. Please don't use the internet to self-diagnose or diagnose those close to you. Instead, remain careful and observant. A timely consultation with a healthcare professional can significantly improve quality of life. Thank you for watching this important video right to the very end. If you found the information useful, please do hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We are also very interested in hearing your own experiences. Have you or your family encountered similar situations? What questions about memory and aging concern you the most? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's discuss this together.